You are listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my regular weekly guests, and we are all here to share the research, the science, and the strategies, as well as some of the fun, to help you to create a more active life. Hello and welcome back to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my guest this week, who's Kelly Cookson. Now, Kelly will tell you a little bit more about herself, but if I say the name of her marketing company is Cheer Up Marketing, it hopefully will give you a little bit of an idea about the sort of thing we're going to be talking about today. Kelly's got many years, over 14 years experience in marketing strategy, and she's really passionate about helping business owners to generate consistent leads and revenue. So I'll give you her links at the end, and they'll be in the show notes, so that if you do want to contact her about any sort of marketing strategy, then please do. But what we're talking about today is something slightly different, but really important. And I think it's something that's very underestimated when we plan activity or when we're planning a fitness program or anything, and that's positive psychology. So Kelly, tell us a little bit about you, and also then about what positive psychology actually is.
Thanks, Sarah. I can now imagine all of your listeners thinking, what on earth has positive psychology got to do with marketing strategy, and how have we got to there from there? So as you mentioned, my background is in marketing, and really the positive psychology has only been a recent addition to my kind of wheelhouse of skills, if you like. So I started off running my own business 3.5 years ago now. And at the beginning, I was just teaching marketing strategy. I was a freelancer for hire, basically. But as my business has evolved and I've ended up working with mainly female entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, if you like, one-woman bands, teaching them marketing strategy or helping them to create and execute on their strategy, I kept coming up against this block, and it was mindset. Which is where the pos psych has come in. So I could give my clients a marketing strategy and say, right, now you've got to go and maybe create a podcast or get really visible on Instagram, grow your email list. And sometimes there was this thing that was holding them back and stopping them from doing it. And I discovered it was this mindset block, which was all news to me. Like, I'd started to experience it myself as an entrepreneur. Never before in my corporate life had I even really thought about it in that way. So to cut a longer story short, I ended up in the summer of 2022 understanding more about positive psychology, and I actually trained as a certified positive psychology coach, and now I blend that in, so mindset support via positive psychology for my marketing clients. So when you come to me for your marketing strategy, yes, you get that, but you also get that help to actually motivate yourself and think about why you're doing all of this for your business and so on. So it's been a really powerful combination, and it's safe to say I'm hooked on it for all areas of life, wellness, health, business.
And before all your listeners start saying, well, hang on, I don't do marketing, so I don't need this. It's actually something that is so important in overall life. And I know when we were talking earlier, you said about how this isn't just about business, about being an entrepreneur, but it's actually about the impact of positive psychology onto your overall health and wellness. And, this podcast is all about creating active lives. And for a lot of people, they've had negative experiences in the past, or they think they're going to be made to shin up ropes like they did in school. And this is where, using positive psychology can be such an important part of starting to become more active, can't it?
Yes, and it's about building on what's going well in life. So you can think about positive psychology as or it's basically the opposite of traditional psychology, which is all about diagnosing problems, and finding things that are going wrong. But positive psychology is about focusing on the good life, like what works, what's going well within your life, your relationships and your work. And it's about building on that human strength and improving your productivity, nurturing your zone of genius, and basically helping you reach your full potential. So I think you can clearly see where that interlinks with what we're doing around health and fitness. And in fact, under positive psychology in its current form, there are 6 pillars, one of them which is health, which is really important for this overall sense of well-being and that things are going well and you're living your best life.
And that's it, because a lot of people, I think, when they start thinking about getting fitter or getting healthier or doing more activity, it's like, it's going to be too hard. I'm not going to be able to do it. They focus on the negatives which, let's face it,
Yeah.
we kind of tend to. So how can they flip that into, okay, I'm doing very little at the moment. Instead of thinking it's going to be awful, how can they flip that sort of switch into something more positive?
Yeah, great question. So I think in terms of positive psychology and the health pillar there, we actually break it down into 4 areas. So it's not all about exercise. So it could be useful to start thinking about it maybe more holistically. So the quadrant of health, I guess, if you want to say it that way, is made up of nutrition, movement, sleep, and restoration. And restoration can actually be physical exercise if that makes you feel, at the end of it, you've got more energy, you're more vibrant, you're more alive. Or it could be something like reading a book, doing cross stitch. I don't know, I'm trying to think of hobbies, but those kind of that downtime where you're not switched on, but you're doing something that you love. So I think an important place to start, and what we teach in positive psychology, is to almost review those 4 areas: your nutrition, your movement, your sleep, and your restoration, and start by giving yourself a score out of 10. So thinking, right, how I'm eating right now, what does that look like? If 1 is absolutely the worst diet possible for me, and 10 is absolutely amazing, like smashing it, doing really well with my nutrition, give yourself a score between 1 and 10. And you can do that across all 4 of those areas. So if you were looking at movement specifically, because we're thinking about fitness, maybe, going to the gym or whatever exercise looks like, you can then ask yourself, well, okay, I've rated myself at a 5 for movement because maybe I'm sat at a desk all day, or I've, outsource the dog walking to my parents or something like that. I'm not doing as well as I could be. And then simply ask, what would a 10 out of 10 for movement look like for you? So ignore everyone else, ignore Usain Bolt or any fitness influencers or those kind of people. What would 10 out of 10 for movement look like for you? And if you're currently at a 5, what could you do to nudge it to a 6? So I think that's a good place to start.
Do you think as well it's important for people to focus as well on things that they enjoy? Because again, it's, for me, the quickest way to create a habit, the quickest way to build is to actually pick something you enjoy. So if you hate the idea of the gym, then don't make yourself go to the gym, because actually you'll find every excuse not to. But if you like going for a walk, if you like going swimming, if you like doing yoga, start with something that you enjoy, that you're comfortable with, because like that first step, as you say, you're not going to go from a 5 to a 10 overnight. It's going to take a while. But it's so important, isn't it, to think of something that you actually enjoy to start with, and then who knows what will happen after that.
Yeah, and joy is actually a great word. So if you think about an exercise that could be useful for everyone to do, if you've never done this before, is to actually just set yourself 5 or 10 minutes, get out a pen and paper and write down as many things as you can in that time that give you a mini jolt of joy or invoke some kind of positive emotion. You might find that actually when you think about it, oh, well, I do love swimming, or I've not done it for years. Or maybe you did netball at school or something like that, and that brings fond memories. So if you can start writing down a list of everything, not necessarily focusing on movement, but some of that might come in. So what makes you feel that happiness, that jolt of joy, maybe even serenity, or just that hope for the future, that you're doing something that you love and it's taking you somewhere outside of the daily grind. You can write all of that down, and then if there is something within that long list, hopefully a long list, little things, even like just walking my daughter to school is one of the things I like to do, so that's movement, but also something I enjoy. So what can you take from that list and maybe start to do more of that has got a physical like movement element to it? Pick things that you like and enjoy, and that's the first step to moving more and nudging yourself up from a 5 to a 6 or a 7.
And again, but that's something, I mean, it's something I very much sort of preach on courses, and I do use the word preach, but it's, if people, it might be that, someone says, oh, well, I suppose I could go for a walk. And it's like, okay, well, you obviously don't want to go for a walk, but what might make the walk better? Well, if I walk with a friend. So actually, I don't like the walking, but I like the conversation I have with my friend while I'm walking. And it's
love that.
Building that sort of joy in. So it again, you're right, it's looking for that joy. It's looking for things that people look forward to, because it will bring them some joy. And then they're more likely to want to do it than if it's, we all know what it's like. If it's something you don't want to do, you just don't do it. And
absolutely,
it really helps with goals as well, I think. And again, one of the things we were talking about earlier is like growth mindset, fixed mindset. And I think quite often goals are coming from a very fixed mindset place. Quite often it's the shoulds, the oughts, but also very, very boxed in, specific, smart goals. Whereas actually, if we focus on a little bit more fluidity, a little bit more, I would say, smart casual goals, but sometimes that can actually make the difference, can't it, in motivating you to move more.
Yeah, and when we talk about fixed mindset versus growth mindset, and when it comes to setting goals or trying new things, some people are naturally more fixed mindset than others. And, you know, a lot of this comes from maybe how you were brought up or the way your parents acted and that kind of thing. But the good news is we can all train ourselves to adopt more of a growth mindset and build on that. So if you feel like you are in the fixed mindset camp, and how do you know you're in the fixed mindset? Well, one of the things that you might recognize is that maybe when things don't go so well for you, perhaps you haven't, reached the goal that you wanted to, or you failed at the first hurdle of going for that walk with that friend, and you start to blame other people or circumstances. Well, it was raining, so, I couldn't go out, or, there was a traffic jam and I didn't get to the gym on time, so I just went home. Those kind of things where you fall into victim mode and it's not on you, that's often a sign of fixed mindset. So if we can start to recognize when that happens and move ourselves more to the growth mindset, which could be, all right, well, I didn't get out for that walk because it was raining. What could I do next time to make sure that I actually do get out? Well, I'm going to have my wellies and a Mac by the door, or check the forecast and pick a time when it's not raining. Those simple things where you can start to learn from challenges or negative experiences and take the steps to counteract it next time. So I think part of that is becoming more aware of when you go into fixed mindset around your movement or your wellness or your exercise, and start to think, I'm doing it again. Right, what can I do actually to move it forward and have a growth mindset approach to this?
But again, it's even with growth mindsets, it's all those small steps, isn't it? Because I work with a lot of people, and I've just I do a lot on sort of creating habits, and I mean, there's masses of research and stuff out there about creating habits and those teeny weeny little steps. And people sort of say, I want to do more relaxation or meditation. You're never going to go from nothing to an hour. So I'll say to people, put a time in your diary. I'm not saying structure your life so rigidly that every minute's accounted for, but put a time in your diary where you know you're not going to be disturbed. Just 5 minutes initially. And then all you need to do first maybe is just get a mat or a cushion or somewhere and just sit there. And you don't even have to do the meditation, but you're creating the habit. And it's like you're saying with a walk. It's if you go for a walk at a certain time, most days, you start to automatically just get ready and go for the walk. But part of the first step might be, as you say, to have your wellies and a Mac by the door in case it's raining.
Yeah, I love that. And the thing about putting the time in your calendar, so I do this, part of my whole thing around running my own business, and I've got a 6-year-old daughter and a husband, and like everybody, I've got all of these things that I want to do and all the people that you want to see and all of the hobbies and things, and a limited amount of time. We all have the same time in the day. So what I tend to do with structuring my business and my wellness side of things is when I look at planning my week ahead, in fact, I've now done this. So we're recording this beginning of June, but mid-May, I actually put all of my gym sessions in up to the school holidays in my calendar. They're in first. And so therefore clients can't book meetings when I'm supposed to be doing my gym class, or, I've got a set night where I say to my husband, Tuesday nights I go to yoga, so like he's in. So we've just organised it so that time is in there first, because that's important to me. And also I know that if it's not in there, it won't happen.
And that's a really important part, actually, I think, of anything positive. I mean, you obviously know a lot more about positive psychology than I do, but I think one of the things is prioritising what matters to you. And it's not even necessarily prioritising what's important, but it's what matters to you. Which might not necessarily
that's the motivation behind it.
And it's kind of like, my yoga is really important to me, my gym session is really important to me, and things. And it's quite funny actually, because I used to do Saturday morning circuit classes, 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock, and Saturday mornings, traditionally there were a few hangovers, shall we say, sore heads, and people would often say, I really, really didn't want to come, just didn't fancy it, but you play such great music that I thought, oh no, I want to go along for the music. And for me, that's finding a positive in something that drives them. So, I know in your bio you've said about, you go to the gym a lot, but not necessarily to break records, but, for the music and things like that.
My husband's a tracker, so he's like, "Oh, how do you know if you're improving if you're not writing down all your weights?" I'm like, "Well, do you know what?" So my motivation, and this comes back to positive psychology, so it ties into the meaning pillar. The meaning behind this is, so I'm now 41 and I want to be strong and fit for my daughter, like she's running around. I want to keep up with her. But also in terms of business goals, I'm very ambitious and I have tested this out. And I know that when I prioritize my own health and wellness and I get to that gym class, because I enjoy the gym, I'm one of those annoying people, I'm afraid. I love it there. If I go to a nice gym, it's got a sauna and a nice cafe. So for me, that's a positivity boost to treat myself to the sauna and have a cappuccino and stuff while I'm there. But I know that when I prioritize me and my health and physical fitness, my business performance absolutely moves upwards with that trend. And it's when I have, sacked off going to the gym for doing work, I feel dreadful. And actually those months I look at the money I'm making, because it's very consider I am the main earner in the business. It's just me. I'm a solopreneur. And when I don't feel great, I don't do as well. So I think, well, my whole goals around of my business and being there for my daughter, it's all tied together. So I can see that trend of when I go to the gym and when I do this and I come out and I'm buzzing and I feel great, my business does well. That's really important to me.
That's such an interesting... that's just so interesting, because I think sometimes we compartmentalize our lives. And I know, you hear a lot about work-life balance. And to me, no, it's balance. It's life balance. And, those of you who don't have businesses, but those of you who maybe have families, or you look after parents, or you might be retired, or whatever you've got going on in your life, being fitter, and I don't necessarily mean being able to run a marathon, but just being in good physical shape and health helps everything. And those of us, any of us who've ever been ill will know that it really takes a toll on the way you think, the way you move, everything. And, I think we compartmentalize, physical activity is over here and nutrition's over here and my business is over here. We don't see it as a holistic balance. We tend to say, right, I'm this month I'm going to work on my social things. We don't necessarily think, how could I do that and incorporate healthy eating, physical activity? We could meet friends and then go for a nice healthy lunch afterwards. So I think we need to be linking all these different compartments in our life. We need them to sort of flow together. And I'm guessing that, like you're saying, when you're going to the gym, when you're prioritizing that time for you and your business is much better for any of us, if we prioritize ourselves in some way, whether it's half an hour a week or half an hour a day or an hour a day, it gives us that boost in every other area of our lives. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, I massively agree. And, I've definitely gone through periods. It's only really like the first 6 months of running my business, I let all of that stuff slide, partly because it was in COVID. I started my business 3 months before the pandemic, which was great. But so no gyms were open, but I did let the fitness and my own well-being slide because I was so focused on starting a business. And it's over time that then I've tested this, because you go through busy periods where you make sacrifices. But actually, the pos psych as well has helped me to think, well, why am I doing this? Why am I running my own business? Actually, I started it so I could spend time with my daughter when she started school and walk her to and from and have all the school holidays off. They're never there, are they? There's always inset days and all those weeks off. So that's why I started a business. I actually didn't start it to make buckets of money, although now, monetary goals are motivating for me. But I actually started it so that I could have more time with her. And when I lose sight of that goal, that's when things start to go wrong and I start to feel tired and overwhelmed. And it's about bringing it back to that. Why? So the motivation and staying healthy.
And it's being honest about the why as well, isn't it? You don't have to share your why with everyone else, but it's being honest about why you want to be more active or why you want to make more money. Like you say, it's to be able to spend more time with your daughter and have more time with her. And I think, again, it's tying activity into that. What will activity give you that you haven't got now? And it might be to be stronger, to be fitter, to be more active with children or grandchildren. It might just be to be able to go hiking, one of my passions, or just to enjoy kind of leisure time physical activity. And I think, again, we don't necessarily have to have goals for all our activity. We just kind of have to have the goal of doing it, rather than having a goal of, running a 5K in this time or doing something in that time. I think sometimes, my goal is to come away thinking I enjoyed that. Yeah.
Yes. And really, because we just touched on money a little bit, but health is the real wealth. And I know this is something that's a lot of people are aware of, that quote, and it's always around on social media, but it is so true. It actually doesn't matter what my business is doing if I don't feel well enough to enjoy the fruits of that labor. So that does mean prioritizing sleep. I'm really boring. I go to bed at the same time every night, get up at the same time, but I feel great for it. And there's lots of other stuff I do around nutrition and caffeine and all those kind of things. So, if I let that side of it slide and I wake up with a headache because I've not looked after myself, and I can't enjoy the money that I'm paying myself for my business. So, that's something that I have to keep reminding myself of, because like I said, I'm quite ambitious. So it's like, oh, well, maybe if I didn't hang out in the sauna, maybe if I don't go to the gym, I get 2 hours back that day and I could create this thing here for my business. Well, actually, I'll be really tired. So is it worth it? Well, no, it's not.
It's not, is it? And it's, like you say, it's everything. When you're tired, when you're not prioritizing yourself, things go. And I think it's, even if it's, like I say, even if it's half an hour a week, ideally you build up gradually. And again, if you're not doing anything, if you're not prioritizing things at the moment, I'm guessing as well, it's important not to say, right, I'm going to have an hour every single day, because you won't be comfortable with it. But if you sort of say, right, I'll just take half an hour a week, and then gradually I'll add in 10 minutes on that day and 10 minutes on that day, and just ease into it gradually, so that you adjust to, if you like, the psychology of putting yourself first.
Yeah, and something else you can try, which is a positivity and like a positive psychology intervention, if you like, is around positivity boosters. So remember I mentioned that list earlier of writing down things that you enjoy that bring up positive emotions. You can add those into your daily routine. So if there are some that are around movement, then if you think about the obvious points of the day are the commute to work in the morning, or doing the school run, or driving to your office. And then there's lunchtime. And then there's maybe like getting ready for bed, evening, like wind down. What can you take from your list of positivity boosters, maybe the movement ones, because we're talking about exercise specifically, and bake those into those 3 points in your day? So I've managed to do the walking, and I'll do the school run. We walk it. Unless it's like a monsoon out there, then we do drive. But that makes me feel great. It's not even 9 o'clock and I've already done, it's a 1.5 mile round trip by the time I've dropped off and walked back. Tick. That's something that's not hard to get into the habit of doing. Also like lunchtime. So I love a podcast, and hence being on them. But I will listen to a podcast and do a lap around the block to get off my bottom and stop staring at the screen. So I'll do that. So the positivity booster is, I'm going to listen to this podcast that I love whilst walking around. And then, evening routine, what I've tried with the stretching, because I'm really bad at stretching. One of the things that I don't do enough of is lying still. I'm very go. So yoga and meditation for me is really difficult. But I've baked in some evening meditation where I'm already in bed, and I've got my Insight Timer app, loads of free meditations on there. And I'll listen to a 10-minute meditation while I'm lying down, or maybe a gratitude meditation. So already in the day, 3 things that I'm already doing: school run, lunch break, going to bed. Pop 3 things in there that add to health.
Really interesting you say that, because I think next week I'm recording a podcast specifically about stillness, because we always think of activities moving, but actually things like relaxation, meditation, stretching and stillness can be really, really important for mindset and things.
It's a weak point for me.
It's interesting because I work from home like a lot of people, and the temptation is, I'll just check my emails, and so I go for a little walk around the block before I start work, and then when I come back through my front door, I'm at work, and then at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, when I switch my laptop off, I go for another walk around the block, because then when I walk back through the door, I'm home.
You're off.
And that psychologically means I rarely go in my office once I've done that, because I've commuted home. But again, I'm getting a little bit of activity in, I'm shedding the day, but I'm also creating the space between working from home and being at home. And again, something as simple as that could help somebody just shift into a slightly more positive thing, and it really helps. You mentioned when we were speaking.
Have you tracked that? Sorry, I was going to ask. Have you tracked how you feel if you don't do that? So if you don't do the logging on, the logging off like routine, have you noticed that you feel differently?
Yeah, if I don't log off, then I get twitchy, and I'll just check this, or I'll be checking emails on my phone, my work phone. I'll just see if they've responded to me, and it's like, no, Sarah, stop it. It's 5:30. No one's at work, and also you're in fitness. It's not urgent. They haven't found a whole new way to do the squat that everybody needs to know tomorrow.
Because something your listeners could do is tracking that. So I was just thinking with my own, adding those positivity boosters, those movement activities into those 3 points of my daily routine, is you can keep a diary. So even if you did it just for 7 days and notice, like at the end of the day, how do I feel after walking the school run instead of driving? And that then in turn motivates you, because you will see a positive improvement from that. So maybe when you're doing your quadrant of the 4 areas that you want to improve on, maybe you have nudged up from a 5 to maybe a 7 just over that week of doing those extra little things. And that in turn becomes motivating, because you can see the progress and the difference it's making to how you feel.
But it's also creating that little habit of going for a walk or doing some relaxation, doing some yoga. It's even if you only do 5 minutes, that's your time. And some days I might do, like if I'm doing meditation or something like you, sometimes it'll be 5 minutes, sometimes it'll be half an hour. It all just depends on what I feel I need. There's what was it I read the other day? It was at a conference I was at, and they said if you're feeling good about yourself, you need to spend what was it? It was something like if you've got time to get out into nature for half an hour a day. If you haven't got time, get out in nature for an hour a day. And it's that kind of, if you think you haven't got time for yourself, then actually you need to make more time. It's one of those, isn't it? Yeah. One of the things we mentioned a little bit earlier when we were talking about the sort of things I was going to ask you is a flow experience. And I'm really intrigued by that.
Ooh, yes.
A flow experience.
Okay, cool. So in positive psychology, we talk about flow experiences as, well, first of all, the recommendations of the scientists that have done the research around this recommend getting into flow at least once a week, and that will boost how well you feel, like boost your wellness levels, your overall kind of life satisfaction. So what is a flow experience? Funnily enough, it's often tied to physical movement. So you'll know you're in flow when you're doing something and you lose track of time. The trick to it is it has to be something that's not super easy for you to do. It's got to be just the right amount of challenging, which is often why sport or playing musical instruments comes into it. So you feel like you're completely absorbed. For me, actually, it's writing. So it's not a physical thing. So I'm writing. And then I look up and go, oh my goodness, I've been doing that for a whole hour. Like I had no idea. Enjoying it, but I was really having to think, and it flowed, and I felt like everything was just moving and coming out, and almost like you've tapped into the muse or like the universal power. A lot of people find it with sports. So if you're trying to, I'm trying to think of a sporty example, but playing tennis, right? You're in the flow because you're hitting that ball, you're concentrating, you're moving your body, and you're thinking, and it's challenging, but you love it. That kind of thing. And funnily enough, video games often will let you get into flow. So if people are telling you not to play on the computer, actually it does count as a flow experience. And the research around that is really interesting because people are concentrating on moving the joystick, looking at the screen. I think obviously if you're there 10 hours a day in the dark, it's probably not good for you. But yes, video games do count. If they get you into flow, then that does count as a flow experience.
Candy Crush, here I come. But it's, so I suppose most of it's like, for me, sometimes when I'm doing a jigsaw, I'll look up and it's an hour later and I only meant to do 3 pieces.
Flow experience.
So it's where you really just switch off and you're absorbed completely.
Immersed.
So it's kind of mindfulness. It's flow. It's almost hypnotic. Just you're
a little bit. And it's
in it.
The other thing is you're not bothered about if other people are observing you. It's like you feel almost like confident in your ability to do the task at hand. You maybe lose self-consciousness. So perhaps if you are around other people, maybe doing a sport or something like that, and you're so immersed in it that you almost like you become unaware of others around you, like you're just in the zone and flowing.
Yeah. So I think you mentioned netball earlier, and it's when you're in that team state, you're not worrying about it. You're just thinking what's happening with the sport, with the team, where do I need to be? And it's that sounds really good. And I think funnily enough, I know a lot of people recently who say that instead of tracking all their runs and their everything, they're actually just going out with no watches, nothing, and they're just running
just for the
sheer enjoyment of it.
Yeah.
They're running until they feel, I've had enough now. And actually, we know, don't we, that kind of giving our conscious brains, if you like, a bit of a rest or a bit of a break, we know that fosters creativity.
Yes, and you'll often find off the back of a flow experience that you do feel more creative, like you've tapped into something almost. Yes. And I know a close friend of mine, so she, by her own admission, is somebody that's worked in corporate for like a whole adult life, so just sitting at a computer. And her mum passed away, and whilst her mum was ill, she started doing CrossFit, which was massively out of her comfort zone. We did it together actually for a while. But she said to me at the end of each class, do you know what, for that whole hour, I can't think about anything else because I'm so focused on trying to lift that barbell or figure out what my arms and legs should be doing, and I'm so tired and sweating so much and it's such hard work. But for her, that whole hour, she wasn't worrying about stuff because she was just like, oh, I've got to do this now and jump on that box and try and climb this rope and all of that crazy stuff. And yeah, so it really helped her with just taking herself out of the situation. She was in flow doing that sport.
See, that's really, really interesting. I ought to have a light bulb above my head right now because I used to do a lot of, I used to teach a lot of fitness and activity within mental health units, residential and outpatients as well. And so many people would come up and say, oh God, I love this because I just don't think about my condition or anything. I'm just so focused on doing the exercise. Yeah. So I guess that's the flow as well.
They're in flow, so it's sure.
It's finding the activity then, isn't it? It must find the activity that gives you that flow state, that flow experience. And then it's going to be something you enjoy probably, but it might not be. It might actually be something that does give you a little bit of a challenge and takes your mind off everything else.
Yeah, for her, it was insane. Like, we're going to CrossFit. I mean, look at those people that do CrossFit. If you've not seen a CrossFitter, Google the CrossFit Games. And this is just myself and my friend, like just normal women, like going to this CrossFit class, like in our late 30s, having never really done that much exercise before at that point. So for her to actually do it, and she continues, I ended up moving gyms so that it fit in with my lifestyle more, where there's a creche and everything, so I can go with my daughter. But she still does it, and she's now one of these super fit people that does a 7 a.m. class, which just blows my mind. But it's become a whole lifestyle for her, from like pushing out of that comfort zone, but realizing this is giving her an escape from what was happening in her personal life.
And that's, but again, this is where positive psychology comes in, isn't it? Because it's not about, it's just about giving yourself breaks, but also finding things that give you that joy, that give you that flow, that help you. Something else I wanted to ask about was, and you've mentioned it a couple of times, we've talked about joy, but talking about gratitude. Again, it's a very positive practice, isn't it? And it's not just sitting there saying, thank you very much for, there's more to it than just saying thank you a lot, isn't there?
Yeah, so the science of gratitude is really interesting because on the face of it, when I give this to clients to do, it almost sounds too simple, like, well, that can't have any kind of impact. And usually, like, one of the most common positive psychology interventions around gratitude is the 3 good things exercise. And I do this every day in bed before I do my meditation, but I'll write down 3 good things that happened to me that day, 3 things that I'm grateful for. And actually, usually I tie them into a work thing, a mum thing, like me being a parent, and then a fitness thing. And whether it just was, I made a healthy dinner from scratch, or I went and did the gym or whatever. But the science around it is that they've done a lot of research on this. And gratitude, although it's super easy to do it, it's consistently been shown across the board to increase your well-being outcomes. And that might include being able to sleep better, feeling less tired. There have been studies around depression, and people with acute depression have been managed to move out of that or improve their symptoms, improve how they feel through these simple gratitude practices. There's also, it reduces stress. You can relate better to other people. There are so many things, so many positive outcomes of practicing gratitude that you wouldn't think just from that simple intervention. But the trick is to write it down and really just sit with it for a minute as you think back over the day. And if you are in a situation where you're struggling to find things to be grateful for, it can be a really simple thing. Like, I'm grateful for my morning cup of tea, or, the checkout lady at Tesco said hi and we had a little chat. I'm grateful for that interaction, something like that. has been proven to give such a boost to your overall well-being and that sense of good life that we're trying to get to with positive psychology.
I think sometimes people think you've got to think of these really big things to be grateful for, but actually it might just be, I'm really grateful for fresh sheets on my bed tonight. And I know one I use every now and then is I'm really grateful for the fact that my body it still keeps going despite my best attempts to sabotage it. But no, I'm pretty good. I'm like you, I'm kind of thinking, no, I want to keep going for as long as possible. And I do as much as I can. But it might be I'm really grateful that my body allows me to do the activity that I want to do. And so it can be simple, it can be really profound, really. But actually, a lot of the time, we forget, don't we, to be grateful for some of the simple things in life.
So writing it down, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, I might want to give that a try, just do it for 7 days. You should bake it into your routine. It makes sense, I think, to do it at the end of the day because you can reflect. Or if you're a morning person, maybe think about the previous day or something that you're grateful for that's going to come that day. But if you can do it for 7 days and just notice at the beginning of the 7 days how you felt and after. And there is actually a positivity test that you can take online as well, which I can't remember the URL now, but maybe we can stick it in the show notes where you can go and give yourself like a positivity assessment of how much happiness you're feeling. Do your 7 days of gratitude and then retake the test and see where you're at.
And particularly
it's really interesting
around something like physical activity, think of something every day to do with activity. I'm grateful that I got to go for a walk today. I'm grateful for the sunshine that meant I could sit in my garden and do some gardening. So think of something to do with activity because then like anything, doesn't it? It becomes a habit, but it also becomes a subconscious. You're looking for, the positivity and everything. And it's like I say, I think a lot of people think positive psychology is everything's lovely, everything's wonderful, but it's
about balancing the negative because we all have negative things happen in life. And it's definitely not about being 100% happy, clappy, ecstatic all of the time. But in fact, this is really interesting. One of the things that I think the thing that blew my mind the most when I was learning about pos psych was that, it's 40% of your emotions or how positive you feel is genetic. So you can look at your parents maybe, and if they're either like glass half full or maybe a little bit Eeyore, some of that can pass down to you. So you're like naturally 40% of how positive you naturally feel is down to your genes. Just 10% is down to your circumstances. So they've done loads of studies on people living in abject poverty, even in places like India, in slums, and actually only 10% of those living circumstances only had a 10% effect on their positivity, which leaves the remaining 50% of how good you feel is within your control. So you have a huge scope for boosting your positive emotions, like how good you feel every day. Which when I heard that, I thought, oh my goodness, imagine if I could feel like 50% more positive or wake up with more of a spring in my step. What could I achieve with that energy and that feeling? So I started absorbing all of these things, right? Positivity boosters, gratitude practice. I'm going to do it all and just see if I can feel even better.
But I guess as well, for most people, it's start with something simple, even if it's just one thing you're grateful for, and then build it up gradually.
Gratitude, I would start with. It's the easiest and most effective thing.
And link it to activity, link it to what you're eating, link it to how you're feeling, because the better you feel, the more activity we naturally do. And then you suddenly realise that actually you've got an active lifestyle. You might not be going to the gym, you might not be doing structured exercise, but actually you're doing so much more in your everyday life that it all counts. And I think that's one of the things. I've really enjoyed talking to you about this, and it is definitely something I'd like to talk more about at some point. Particularly, I know you were saying about how you use it with clients and things, so maybe that's something to come back and talk about another time. But
I'd love to. I can talk about it for hours.
Oh, don't. I could talk about this for hours, because I just think, and again, I think, getting people to think about positive things that they want to achieve is so much better than things that they want to stop doing or giving up.
Or improve on, like with weaknesses. Focus on your strengths and build on that, rather than try and become a gym bunny when you're not that way inclined or you don't enjoy it. That's not the way to achieve anything. It's like, think about the things you want to do or you are good at or were good at, maybe if you've done a sport before, and build on that strength. It's much easier.
And that's it. And where can people find you then if they want to find out more about what you do?
So I am online, Kelly Cookson on LinkedIn. You can find me at Cheer Up Marketing on Instagram. I'm Kelly Cookson on Facebook, and my website is cheerupmarketing.com. And there's some freebies on there. In fact, there is a blend of mindset and marketing. So if you are an entrepreneur, check out cheerupmarketing.com/free. And there's a bunch of POS-psych marketing strategy freebies on there that you can grab.
Fabulous. I'm off to find that out now. Kelly, thank you so much for coming in and talking. And I think it's definitely something we all need to be taking on board. So hopefully be back again maybe a bit later on in the year and just talk a little bit more about maybe positive psychology moving into the winter for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, because that's often a time where it can go a little bit awry, isn't it, with particularly around activity.
Yeah, I'm definitely solar powered.
Yeah, we are. But thank you so much for coming on. Thank you all for listening. This is Sarah Bolitho with Creating Active Lives, and we will see you in the next podcast. Take care. Thank you for listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Bolitho, and my guests. Join me each week for more on how to create and sustain everyday activity, and follow me online at Fitness Career Mentor or Fabulous if you're interested in career development and more on creating active lifestyles.